This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
And as usual, we are your hosts for this episode. This episode is another in our alumni series. And who is on this episode, Audrey?
This one's with Chris Morgan.
Yes, Chris Morgan, an old friend of mine. He studied computer science here back in the early 2000s. He graduated with his bachelor's degree in 2004, went on to get a master's in software engineering, also from USC in the Viterbi School in 2007. He has a really awesome career in software engineering. He's worked across a lot of fantastic companies, big and small. He started with Boeing, went to a small contractor called Applied Signal Technology, went on to Google, did some other things with smaller companies, went back to Google. He's now at Google again. He loves Google. And this was a really cool conversation to catch up with him, kind of add it to those stories of alumni stories that we've been doing so far, and kind of his memories of this place and what he's been doing since then and his time. But he and his family live up in the Seattle area working at Google, and he does some really cool things.
Yeah, I think this is a really cool episode for learning about the perspective of a small company versus a big company, because definitely as engineering students, as we look for internships and full-time work, that's really a question. It's like, oh, there's so many huge engineering companies and then a lot of really small ones doing cool work too. So I think it can help people kind of answer that question for themselves.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that sometimes students come in thinking that their perception of success or others' perception of their success is based on the perception of the quality of the company they work at. There's always this big like, well, I don't know if I want to work at this company because they're not as popular as like Google or well-known as Google, right? Is that a thought that goes on people's minds?
I think less so in mechanical engineering. I would say I definitely get that sense from my friends in computer science. It's almost like kind of when you're applying to schools.
Sure,
it's all about
ranking, reputation.
Exactly. So, I think it's easy to say, oh, I work at X company and kind of, get some pride from the reaction on that. But the reality is there's so many large companies and small companies doing great work, and you can, there's just a million things you can do. So,
or in Chris's case, you never know when that small company is going to be bought by said larger company, and then you end up working at them anyway.
Yeah. Or, a lot of them too, even if you're working in a big company, you might be on a really small team working on something really niche. So it goes everywhere.
It goes this way, yeah. Fair warning before we get into Chris's conversation. This was a conversation done over kind of a video interview, and so you can hear Audrey and I just like normal, but we are patching into kind of a phone call essentially for Chris. So there will be a kind of a difference in the audio there, but I think it all comes in pretty clear. And also at some point, Audrey does head out because she has to go to class, and so Chris and I continue the conversation. But we didn't. Audrey, I promise we didn't go that much longer. We got through the bulk of it. But I want you to enjoy Chris Morgan, graduate of computer science. How you doing, buddy?
Not too bad. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for doing this, and thanks for rescheduling.
Minor snowpocalypse. It was fine.
Yeah, I saw the photos of all the snow you guys were getting, and I was like, that is just nuts. And so to let people know, we had this booked last week, and all of a sudden it was just like, no, internet's out, can't do it. And I saw the pictures you and your wife were posting, and I was like, this is nuts. How much snow happened in that one day?
So in that first day, I think we got 9 or 10 inches, and then we got another 8 or 9 inches overnight and over the course of the next couple of days. So I shoveled 4 times.
Oh my gosh.
Which was exciting.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Well,
but then I saw Newfoundland got almost 3 feet the other day. So I showed that to my kids. They were less impressed with our snow after that.
I saw people opening their front doors and nothing but snow, and they couldn't get out, and then open their garage doors and couldn't get out. It was just crazy. And just so you know, weather update here from LA, it kind of rained last night. So we are dealing with very similar scenarios.
Actually, I just walked over here and the sun was out. It wasn't raining.
Cool.
So
awesome. Yeah. Well, welcome to the podcast, and thanks for doing it. Obviously I know you pretty well, but Audrey, it's the first time meeting you, and everybody that's listening. Why don't we start with a brief background of where you came from? Like, if I remember correctly, you grew up in Corona. Is that right?
Yep. Yeah. So up until about 5 years ago, I grew up in like a 30 by 30 mile box in Southern California. So I was born in Anaheim. When I was a baby, I lived in Garden Grove for 18 months and then moved to Corona. Lived in Corona for 18 years till I went out to USC. I was the son of a father who was a big UCLA fan. But when we visited USC and UCLA on the same day, we agreed that we weren't going to have a discussion until we visited both schools. And we got done with both schools, and he said, I hate to say this, but I think USC is a better choice for you. So he's like, I felt like they cared a lot more about you.
That's cool.
Went to school at SC, worked a lot of jobs there, graduated, worked at Accenture for a little while. I was definitely convinced. I was one of those kids. So I got my first computer when I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
At a drugstore, which is where they used to sell computers.
Picking up some Tylenol, and I'll have that PC over there. That'd be great.
So my uncle worked at Save On Drugs, and they were selling computers for Christmas.
Really?
And he bought 2 of them and gave one to me for Christmas and said, figure out how this works. And it was a Commodore 64. So, of course, I learned how to program games on it.
Yeah.
And so I played with that for a long time, and I was convinced that I was going to be a computer science, an engineer at the time. Computer science wasn't quite a thing that was in my vocabulary.
Right.
So I had that, decided I was going to be a computer software person. Then as I went through high school, I realized consulting was a thing. And I was convinced when I came to USC that I was going to be a consultant when I grew up. And so I had a business minor, graduated, went to work at Accenture Consulting. Didn't like wearing suits every day, turns out. So I ended up going to work at Boeing, worked there for 3.5 years working on ground systems for satellites. That was really exciting. They paid for my master's degree at USC via the Distance Education Network, which was great. But then I realized I wanted to go work at a smaller company. So I went to work at a company that doesn't exist anymore, called Applied Signal Technology. They had an office in Anaheim Hills, so I didn't have to go up to Sunnyvale where they were. So I worked there for, again, about 3.5 years until they were acquired by Raytheon. Mm-hmm. And that kind of defeated the purpose of working at a smaller company. So that was right around when my son was due to be born. So my plan was to wait for my son to be born, take a bunch of leave, go interview for new jobs, and figure out where to work after that. About 2 months before my son was born, Google messaged me on LinkedIn and said, hey, would you like to come interview? And I said, of course I would. So I did that, and I got an offer about a month before my son was supposed to be born. And I said, hey, can I wait until after my son's born? And they said, sure, but if you get hired before he's born, you can use our paternity leave. And I said, how soon can I start?
So like tomorrow, is that good? Is that good for you?
Yeah. Yeah, there was discussion between my wife and I about borrowing one of the corporate jets if she wanted to labor early while I was at orientation in Mountain View.
Oh my gosh.
That didn't have to happen. But yeah, so I worked at Google in Irvine, which is now called Google Orange County, for 4 years. And at that point, we had my daughter and realized our house in Huntington Beach was too small, and realized that we didn't want to pay for a bigger house in Huntington Beach. And so we went looking for places that had Google and Boeing nearby each other, and ended up in the Pacific Northwest in Washington. My wife no longer works at Boeing. She works at Aerojet Rocketdyne now. She's the smart one in the family. She's the rocket scientist, literally. So, But yeah, so we both live up here now with the two kids in the Pacific Northwest. I spent about 2 years trying out smaller companies up here in between my Google stints, but now I'm back at Google for about 2 years this time. So I've been at Google for a total of 7 or 8 years now.
Wow. Very cool, man. And so when you're at USC and you studied computer engineering, computer science,
Yep.
how did you end up choosing? I mean, there's so many things that are related to computers, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and you said in your intro, you were going to be an engineer, and computer science wasn't necessarily in your lexicon. How did you go about choosing that? And this, what to a lot of our listeners may not know, it's kind of a combo of hardware, software.
Yep.
Was that just the indecisiveness of your time already, or?
No, it was actually it doesn't apply anymore because computer science is in the School of Engineering now. But back then, computer science discipline was in the Letters, Arts, and Sciences College, which meant the most important thing that it meant to me was that I would have to take 3 years of a foreign language. And I was sick of taking foreign languages.
Yeah, back in the day,
And
it had that requirement. Yeah,
yeah,
no longer does anymore.
Not anymore. But so I looked basically at the time, computer engineering, computer science, the only fundamental difference between a straight CS degree on the computer science side was not taking the compilers class, which in retrospect, I wish I would have taken.
Yeah.
But it was cool. So like I literally called the office because we didn't really have the World Wide Web.
Right.
I called the office and I said, the brochure says I don't have to take foreign language if I do computer engineering, computer science. They said, yep, that's correct. I said, cool. That's what I want to do. So that's how I decided that. It meant I got to take a lot of cool electrical engineering classes, and I actually ended up TAing a couple of the electrical engineering classes that I took to make some money on the side.
Awesome.
So that worked out well. But and when I worked at Applied Signal Technology, I spent a lot of time with FPGA designers, and so being able to speak their language helped a lot in that context.
That's awesome. And while you were here, you did a lot of stuff. You were definitely you were never not busy.
That is true.
And I'm remembering a few different things. I remember you researching. I'm pointing. You can't see me, but I'm out my window to
Yep.
EEB. I remember you were doing research in graphics or something in the basement.
Yep. Yeah. So I was a engineering merit research. Basically, I was looking for every program that involved me getting more money because I was a trustee scholar, so my tuition was paid for, but I still had to pay rent and eat.
Sure.
And pay for gas and parking. So the engineering merit research was a program where you got a stipend that you could earn by working hours in research. And I worked with a biology professor actually in the electrical engineering building.
That's right.
On trying to teach high school students biology via video games.
I remember this. You're like flying through like blood canal or like veins and stuff like. I remember your graphics and that. I remember this.
Yeah. So we had a team, a very multidisciplinary team. We had an artist who was amazing and did all of that cool bloodstream stuff, and we had a guy named Jason, not Jason Scott, but a different Jason, who did like a lot of the infrastructure for rendering all these graphics because the cloud wasn't a thing back then. So we had a bunch of very expensive workstations.
Jason Gigaleski?
Sorry?
Gigaleski?
Yes.
Yeah, he's still here, by the way.
Yeah. So he and I, in the summer times, we would get to work very early to avoid traffic so we could leave very early.
He still does that. He gets here at like 5 or 6 in the morning and leaves at 2.
Yep.
Sorry.
Yeah, it was very convenient. But yeah, so he and I worked together. We had a side thing that we were also doing where we would build like kind of an interactive multimedia classroom sort of experience that teachers could use, which is basically what you guys use now. That is not at all related to what we built, but was envisioned by what we built.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the video game thing was super cool. The main thing that we learned was that high school students will always play the pathogen in a battle between the immune system and pathogen. So they learn very well how to effectively spread a virus within humans. So they learned that part of biology.
Awesome.
That's great. And then you also did cycling, if I remember correctly. You were a big road warrior out there.
Yeah, so I raced mountain bikes starting when I was 13. When I came to USC, there wasn't a mountain biking team. but I saw these guys at the club events. It's like the first week after school starts, riding rollers on road bikes out on Truesdale Parkway. And riding rollers is not a skill that's easy to do. You can watch that on YouTube. You can watch people fail at doing that.
Well, help me understand what this is.
So like on a stationary bike, right, your bike is kind of locked in to something. Rollers are just these 3 rollers that you have to balance on while going nowhere.
Oh. On a real
so
bike.
It was on a real bike, yeah. So if you fell off, you either fell down really hard or you started going really fast forward. So it's a great party trick, and it was a really effective way to get alumni to notice us at homecoming, to buy our shirts, which funded most of our activities throughout the year. But yeah, so I saw these guys and they were like, "Hey, well, we don't do mountain bike racing, but we do road racing." And I said, "Well, I guess I can learn to ride my bike on the road." And so I did that, and I was also conveniently the guy with the pickup truck, which meant that I drove to all the races. But yeah, so it was a lot of fun. We were not as well funded back then as they are now.
Yeah.
I've been paying attention to them for a while. They can have like only 4 people stay in a hotel room now, versus when we used to go, we would have 6 guys staying in a hotel room that we paid for 2 people, and the guy would come over and be like, "Why do you have 6 bikes?" Like, well, there's 3 races this weekend, and each of us has a bike for each race. And these other people are just here visiting. Their room is too crowded, so they're putting their bikes here. Like, we have people sleeping on the floor and in the bathtub. Yeah, so it was a fun experience. We sent a few people to nationals, which was cool. And yeah, we met a lot of Trojan alumni who work for various bicycle companies. Oh. So at the time, Cliff Bar, the vice president of sales or marketing or something, was a former Trojan. So we had all the Cliff Bars and Cliff Shots that we ever needed. They also paid for us to fly to nationals, which was cool. And then we would have a couple people that worked at various bike companies that would get us really, really good deals on bikes and stuff. So that was nice.
And for people
listening, another way that
this is very much like this is like Lance Armstrong style, like Tour de France cycling, right?
Yeah, we didn't.
That's the way I summarize it. I know you're not. I know you're qualifying yourself, but
yeah, no, we were pretty fast. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was always fun trying to figure out. I had a very understanding roommate, so it was easy for me to have room for my 2 bikes in our apartment. Yeah. But had I not had a very understanding roommate, that might have been more of a challenge.
I remember at the time, correct me if I'm wrong, but I remember this story where like you guys would go to races and you'd be the only team without like the matching uniform. And at some point in your tenure, didn't you like design the uniform, like this, the skin tight,
Yep.
like the cycling, but all cardinal and gold, like with Tommy on it and everything, right?
Yeah. So the very first race that we went to, like we had restarted the club. Basically, the guys I saw on Truesdale Parkway had never been part of the club until that week. And so what happened was we didn't really know the rules fully around what a uniform meant.
Yeah.
And we went to UC Santa Barbara for our first race, and it was in late January, early February, and it was hailing.
Ah.
And we had made, like, I had designed, well, Joe had actually designed, one of the other guys who was much more artistic than me had designed the jerseys, but I did all the business end of like making sure we could buy them for a cheap price and then sell them to alumni to offset our costs. But we showed up, and 4 of us had black arm warmers that like are these long sleeves that you put over top of the short sleeve jerseys, and black leg warmers or black knee warmers, and different color shoe covers. And the officials were like, "No, a uniform is a uniform. Like, they all have to match." Because some people had red and some people had right. And this is early in the morning and it's hailing and we were not in a great mood. But the story of that is basically we all raced in short sleeves and shorts in a hailstorm. And then we drove around Santa Barbara looking for a laundromat. Because at that time, everybody only had one set of uniforms for a 3-day weekend of cycling. So yeah, but we did jersey orders every year with various different companies. Learned a lot about branding from the university and which color red is the appropriate color red.
Cardinal,
And,
cardinal, not red, right?
Right. Yes. There's a very specific Pantone cardinal.
PMS 201. I know it well.
Yep.
Yeah.
We also got into a disagreement at one point with them because the football team had black like warm ups.
Yeah.
And so we said, cool, we can put black into the jersey. And they were like, no, you can't. We're like, but why not? They said, because you're not the football team. So,
Different rules apply. Different rules apply for the football team.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so that was a lot of fun. We had a lot of adventures and misadventures. Thankfully, no one ever got seriously hurt, so that was good. We did have our share of crashes, and very uncomfortable rides back in the pickup truck with 5 bikes in the back and 4 people trying to sit in my non-extended cab Chevy S10 from Davis back to USC on a Sunday.
That's a rough drive.
Yeah.
Tape deck, CD. What do you got in there? You got back. In the day?
We had a CD, so we had my CD player. It was a 1-disc CD player and a binder full of CDs.
Binder.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was cleaning out my office during the snowpocalypse because the power was out, and found my old CD case, which was pretty impressive. Mostly burned CDs.
Most people don't know this. Did you ever? This is why I'm gonna look at Audrey because this is the first time where I'm gonna mention how old we are. But did you ever have a binder of CDs?
I did actually.
You did?
I
wow,
did.
really?
Yes.
You were burning yourself, like that we're talking about here?
Yes, I am. I am familiar with this.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy. I thought you would just be all MP3s.
No, I had CDs.
Wow, crazy.
I feel like in most of my life, until I was maybe 12, I listened to CDs.
Yeah, that's probably right, I guess.
Yeah.
That's probably right.
Because cars didn't have an aux cord cable until,
that's true.
More recently.
Yeah, now my car doesn't have a CD player. So
wow.
I don't even know. Even if I had a CD, I didn't know what to do with it.
How do you play music then?
All through my phone.
Oh, I see.
Like Bluetooth or anything else. But I have literally no actual device to play a CD. I have a Blu-ray player that is literally collecting dust. But that's the only thing I own in my life that can actually take any type of disc.
Oh, wow. My car has a CD player.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know, mine doesn't.
I discovered the CD player in my car the other day in the glove box.
Oh.
I just assumed it didn't have a CD player, but then I looked and I was getting something out of the glove box and I was like, oh, this is a CD player.
Well, now I need to go look.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's in your glove box.
Blow my mind. I've owned that car for nearly 4 years. I don't know.
Yeah, I was saying, my car is 3 years old. So.
But even though if I found it, I'd be like, cool. I don't know what to do with it. All right, so you're definitely into cycling, definitely doing some research. And at some point, you started working for me. Was the first thing that we did, was that E-Day 2K? Was that like the first big volunteer day? Were you a freshman at that time, a first-year student?
I was a freshman. I was looking for every opportunity to make any amount of money.
Well, one day, come make some money, come volunteer for a stipend, I think is what it was.
I think so, yeah. But yeah, I don't have a great memory of that particular event. I remember lots of panels and stuff, and I remember I listened to Jason's episode, and I remember him saying during Meet USC or whatever the overnight thing was, it's like, okay, everybody, you get 3 people, you get 3 people, you get 3 people because we have enough hosts. And again, very, very understanding roommates. That's the key to my success.
Yeah, we were stringing a lot of stuff together kind of at that time. And E-Day was this big one-day event where I was invite a bunch of high school juniors onto campus, and we had seminars and talks and stuff like that. Go learn about aerospace here and aerospace there, and we consolidated that down to I think more comprehensive visit programs. And then of course we have our big expo in the fall that we do some cool stuff at. And then that eventually turned into what we started working on with the ambassadors, and you were I think one of the youngest ones that we brought in. And then also, as for those that have already listened to Jason's podcast, I don't think we need to retread a lot of that stuff, but basically you were one of the people that was just basically dumb enough to say, sure, yeah, let's make this CD-ROM.
Yeah.
And honestly, it was that perfect at right place, right time, because this is when you were doing research in that multimedia world of that video game element. And I remember we would walk down to that lab and Jason would be like hunkered over in the corner on his computer. We'd ask him a question every once in a while, but we were trying to figure out like video rendering and what we needed to do, like how to get this all onto a CD. I'm having these like little like little blips of memory, but are you piecing that together too? Do you remember that?
Oh yeah, no, I remember that. I remember learning what B-roll was for the first time.
B-roll, yeah, that's right.
I remember. I certainly was not the person who taught you how to edit video in Premiere because I was learning as I went.
I thought it was you. Or you know what it might have been?
I might have taught you everything I knew, which was very little.
So you know what it might have been? It might have been Jason giving you that tutorial, and then when he left, you gave me that tutorial. Maybe. But that is literally, I remember you like. I don't know if you remember an OHE 106 at the time.
I remember.
Like I didn't even have an office. I had like a cubicle.
Right.
And like we had cubicles over there and I didn't even have a cubicle. I was sharing a cubicle.
Oh gosh.
And so it's like, we were just sitting there like hunkered over my desk. Like, this is how we do this. This is how we do that. And I still remember that. That was just amazing stuff.
I also remember, we got that very expensive camera.
Yes.
And I got a press pass to be on the sideline for the USC Washington game.
Oh, that's so cool.
And I took a bunch of video, and then we came back, and like 2 or 3 days later, we were going to edit it, and it was gone.
The camera was
gone? The video was gone from the football game. No, the camera was not gone.
There was a point in which the camera went missing. I do remember that, but I don't know if that was it. But
yeah, so we spent a long time looking for that footage, and it was very sad that it was gone because it never made it onto any of
But you got to go on the field, though. That was pretty awesome.
I did. And the press box. I was told not to talk to the University of Washington football players because apparently I was taunting the punter because he was bad at punting at the
time. You have a press pass, and you're out there actually like cheering people and taunting. That's great.
Yeah, apparently you're not supposed to do that.
They frown upon that.
Yeah.
And then you were kind of the one that kind of carried it through for multiple years because, you know, Jason and Carrie and all them, they graduated and you were kind of left alone. But I still remember, like, there was so much time where we were working on stuff, trying to figure things out. And that one year where it was just basically the two of us, you were like, oh, I guess I'll have to figure out how to do everyone's job.
Yeah. I mean, that's engineering, right? Like you can kind of figure out, you know just enough to be dangerous. So you're like, I can figure out how to do this because this unbridled confidence in my ability to learn how to do something, which always ends up with more work. So
that's a really good point.
One of these decades, I'm going to figure out how to not do that. But I don't know what decade it is.
But that's what got you here. The unbridled confidence at your ability to learn how to do something, I think is what you just said. And I love that. I mean, do you think that's something that you had innate as like a kid and going through high school?
So I think I've always had it, and it's always been reset. It's been reset a few times in my life. Like I was the valedictorian in my high school. It turns out high school is different than college. Like I remember getting my first, like, you get like midterm grades or something, and they weren't all straight A's, and I was like, oh wait, this is harder than I thought it was. Maybe I'm not the smartest person involved in this whole process. And then I go out into the working world and I'm like, okay, this job is pretty easy because it's an entry level job at a big company, right? I can do all of this. I'm very smart. And then I eventually went to Google and I was like, all of these people are smarter than me. Now I kind of look for opportunities. Like as soon as I start to feel like I'm becoming, there's less and less that I can learn.
Yeah. I
go look for ways to like do something I don't know how to do, because otherwise you just get stale.
Yeah.
But yeah, so like recognizing that I had that took a while, but now that I realize I have that, it's an opportunity to like know that I can go try something new, be bad at it for a while, and hopefully get a little better.
Do you see that also in your wife, knowing that she's not in a similar pathway, but also an engineer? Oh,
absolutely. Yeah, she's way smarter than I am. Like she can explain to you like how electronic propulsion works or like how rockets get to orbit and stay there, with like math and stuff. Like I just say it's falling really fast and missing the Earth. She's like, well, actually, it's Jesus. but yeah, I think she definitely understands far more than most people understand about the world. She's in a situation now at this smaller company where everyone is super smart on like the rocket side. Like they understand deeply how their various components work, and she's a systems engineer, so she has to kind of work with all these super smart people to kind of integrate everything together.
Yeah, the integration.
And so she's in the breadth of knowledge kind of phase right now. So she feels like she doesn't necessarily know the depth of any one thing, but she knows kind of how everything's supposed to work together, which is a very useful skill.
Wow. Now, did you and Lisa meet at Boeing?
We did, yeah, at Boeing in Seal Beach. We both worked on the same program. There was kind of this whole. They hired a bunch of people. Basically the year I graduated, that had all just freshly graduated from various schools all over the place, and a lot of us are still. Very few of us are still at that Boeing location, but a lot of us are still friends, and we get together whenever we're in the same place.
This is that whole like group of guys that I've met. Garrett and all those.
Yeah, Garrett and John and everybody you would meet at like an orange picking party at our house.
Yeah, all those things. Yeah, absolutely. And where did Lisa go to school?
Lisa went to school at Rochester Institute of Technology.
RIT.
Yeah, she lived in Arizona and wanted to get as far away as possible from Arizona.
So she went to the tundra.
Yeah,
she went to the frozen.
New York is a cool place, and then it was buried in snow. So
yeah, just ice. That's all I can think about with Rochester.
Yeah.
How do you two, when you compare, because obviously she's around a lot of different people now in Southern California and all those different things. How does she compare your two undergraduate experiences? Or you two? How do you do? Not she, but both of you when you talk about it.
So a thing that she wishes she had done more of is more software. We actually met at Boeing trying to do data analysis using like Perl and SQL scripts, and
you're just writing a romantic comedy right now, right?
it was
Perl and SQL. It was that faded day.
So she like when she went to school, computer science, like they all had an intro to computer science as part of mechanical and aerospace engineering, but they never had like anything in more depth. And she's
like, here's the basics of programming.
More depth than that.
Yeah. Interesting.
Makes sense. So coming from Southern California then and really being here most of your life, how is it moving up to Seattle and being in that environment?
So we love it. Like I'm kind of like Paul said, Lisa survived Rochester, New York, so no winter is scary for her.
Right.
And I don't really tan as much as I burn. And my kids are almost see-through. So we enjoy not being in the sun all the time. But also like it's nice because we're still in the mode, even 5 years in, of worrying about something's going to be crowded. And then we remember that there's like 7 million people in the whole state, and that's less than there is in LA area. So it's probably not going to be super crowded. So it's really nice.
There's more people in LA than in the entire state of Washington.
I think so. The last time I checked. I mean, Seattle is definitely the most condensed part, but we live probably 40 minutes east of Seattle.
Got it.
So yeah, you would, if you just like were airdropped into our house, you would not know that Seattle was 20 miles away.
Wow. So. Yeah, you meant, Chris, we talk about this a lot, but Audrey has spent a lot of time up in Seattle because she has been interning for Microsoft up there.
Oh, cool.
Yes,
we know.
I was just going to say we had a series of podcasts where there was a lot of Seattle talk, so we had to turn it down.
We had to cut back, so now we're back on it. But there's this. That's right. This last summer, it was like you felt like almost everyone you knew from USC was interning in Seattle.
Yeah, there's so many companies up there now, so it's crazy.
Yeah, there's a huge like influx of people, especially from the Bay Area, but to some extent Southern California also. Like Facebook is huge up here and growing. Amazon is obviously huge and growing up here. Microsoft is obviously enormous and still growing up here. Google, and we just announced that we bought an entire like building complex, and like we're landlords now. Plus we have office space.
Oh wow!
and like we're building in South Lake Union, like it's going out of style. So yeah, it's definitely the place where people are coming to escape kind of the Bay Area to a big extent.
Now, I'm curious. There's a lot of legend and lore about the culture of working at Google, and so I think a lot of our listeners would be interested. Like, what's it like to work at Google? It's kind of a really open-ended question, but no one can see you because we're not going to be posting this video at all. But we're talking over video chat. Is it required to wear a Google T-shirt to Google every day, or you just happen to be right now?
It's not. I am doing it right now. I'm wearing my Google accessibility shirt. But
that's a cool shirt. I haven't seen that one, by the way. That's really cool.
Part of the reason I'm doing that is this week I'm part of the on-call interviewer program. So basically, if an interviewer gets sick or something like that, they will ping me minutes before the interview is supposed to start usually, and I'll have to show up and interview somebody for 45 minutes. So I like to wear Google shirts when I do that. Also, there's an entire drawer of my dresser full of Google t-shirts. If I wear anything other than a t-shirt of any kind to work, my manager gets a little worried that I might be interviewing somewhere else. So, so I try not to do that. So I mean, I've been at Google since 2011 with a 2-year break, partway between. So like Google in 2011 was a very different company than Google in 2020, mostly in terms of the size.
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly how many people we have right now, or what we've announced, but we have a lot more people than we had in 2011. So, and I've never worked at the main headquarters in Mountain View or Northern California, so I can only speak to kind of the experience in what we would call remote offices. So like the Irvine office was like 200-ish people, I think, when I started there, and now I think it's closer to 400.
Really?
And so for a while, like we all basically knew everybody, and we mostly worked on one set of products, and so we all had this kind of shared experience, and it was always kind of the not us against them, but constantly trying to prove yourself to make sure that like your office didn't get closed. Not that I ever think that was a real situation that could happen, but like you kind of have that, and that's actually not unique in my career. Like I realized a while ago, I've never worked at a company's headquarters in my whole career. I've always worked at a remote office. So like Boeing, Seal Beach is obviously not small,
right?
But it's not Boeing in Seattle or Boeing in Chicago. And Applied Signal Technology, which wasn't a big company when I joined it in the first place, but our office in Anaheim Hills had 10 people when I started, and about 25 when I left. So like one of those people was the CEO, so we knew that it was never going to be closed. But but it wasn't like we had huge offices traveling all the time. But yeah, so like remote offices, in my experience at least, you always have to prove yourself constantly because you're not there in person, right? And now with the world of video chat, it's gotten a lot easier, but it's still kind of like this: if you're out of sight, out of mind, you want to make sure you're not out of sight. But so so going back to your question about like kind of the experience of Google, obviously there's over 100,000 people here. Everybody has kind of their own experience. My experiences have been very, very good. I've been very lucky, and I really enjoy the challenges and the people I get to work with who are, like I said before, like super, super smart, and the infrastructure that we work on is amazing. Like second to none, in my opinion. Like the reason I left to go work at smaller companies for a while at Google was I realized that the outside world had come a very long way in things like distributed computing, with things like AWS and Azure and GCP. So trying to figure out whether we could build something as cool as what I was building in Google on something like that was an interesting challenge to me. And what I learned about that very quickly was the most interesting challenge that I don't really have to a huge extent at Google is trying to minimize costs up front. So like in I work in the ads business, right? So we obviously spend a lot of money on machines to make a lot of money in ads, and we're working very hard on being efficient in that spend. But when I worked at smaller companies, it was like, could I do this query? It's going to cost X amount of dollars on AWS. Like, is that a system we can build?
Yeah.
And the answer is often no.
Yeah.
So like you get to go back to these first principles of computer science to some extent of like compression and optimization that you just don't have to do right up front at Google, because it's just like, well, how many more machines do you need? Right? we just have them.
Right.
So,
well, that was going to be my next question, which is, what are you working on? Are you specifically working on ads?
Yeah, so I've worked within the ads product area my whole career at Google. So I started on Google Analytics, which is software we basically give away for free for people to figure out the performance of their own websites or their own apps. For our advertisers, there's a tight integration that I helped build a long time ago to get your advertising data into your analytics data so you can measure the performance of your advertising in a more efficient way. I then worked on attribution related systems, which are very interesting, trying to reverse engineer essentially what advertising events should get what amount of credit for you, say, buying something on a website, all in a world with imperfect information.
Did this ad make your money? Did this ad produce this amount of revenue? There's these calculations that are done with the ad attributed to your overall sales.
Right. And so there's this idea of last click attribution, which is basically the last ad you clicked on before converting is the one that gets all the credit, which is great if you are only showing your ads in one place and aren't trying to build awareness or anything like that higher in the funnel.
That's not how ads work.
Right. But yeah, there's a lot of very non-technical reasons why the measurement is the way it is today. And yeah, that could be a whole dissertation.
I bet.
But yeah, so now I work on kind of two systems, both very attached to machine learning. I'll say up front that I am not the person who is building the super smart math behind the machine learning itself, but I'm the one who helps get the massive amount of data in that they need to get in, scale it to a way that it doesn't like take forever to run at kind of a reasonable price. So I kind of build the infrastructure around machine learning for both bid optimization and some other things that we haven't quite launched yet. So yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
So with bid optimization, what we're trying to do is basically say if you're a simplified model would be an advertiser's running 1,000 keywords trying to drive a particular kind of conversion at a particular return on their advertising spend, right? So they want to spend $1 to make $10.
Yeah.
And so what we do is we look at the historical performance of each one of those keywords against that metric, and from a very simple perspective, we put more money behind the keywords that are doing better and take that money away from the keywords that are doing worse within various constraints. And the within various constraints part is the tricky part. The machine learning part on that is actually somewhat straightforward. It's the control theory that sits on top of it that interacts with the machine learning that becomes very interesting.
What would you want people to know about ads that maybe don't understand all of the technical issues behind it? Because I think that in a kind of a lay person's general sense of ads, I think there's a pretty split. I'm going to just take a shot here. There's a pretty split idea of 50-50 of people that hate ads and people that are like, no, I want to see the ads that make more sense to me. But overall, ads can get annoying. I know you're not in charge of ad placement or these pop-ups or anything like that I'm sure people associate with ads. But what would you want people to know from your perspective on the back end as what you're trying to do with ads at Google?
Yeah. So the way I kind of look at it, and this is me speaking for me, is without advertising in general, the web would be a very different place, right? Publishers would not be able to put content online for free or high quality content online for free, right? Like you would have plenty of user generated content. But lots of systems that we take for granted today would not exist.
Yeah.
Because they would not be monetizable. That being said, there are bad actors in the advertising world, and there are, we'll say, indifferent actors in the advertising world. And then there's what we hope to be, or at least what I hope to be. Like again, I'm speaking for myself. Is trying to balance. Like there's three parties in every advertising transaction, right? There's the advertiser, the publisher, which is wherever the ad is shown, and the user, right? Mm-hmm. And at Google, we say, focus on the user and all else will follow. And as long as we keep that in mind, right, we can hopefully ensure a good experience, at least on the advertising that we are in charge of. I can say that there are tons of controls in place and decisions that are made that are not revenue optimizing on our side every day that improve the user experience because it's what's better. It's what's better as a company in the long term too. And so I worked on a system for helping advertisers. To me, at least, one of the most annoying kinds of advertising is called retargeting or remarketing.
Yep.
Which is when the worst example of it is when you buy something and then that thing shows up and follows you all around the web.
Yeah.
because the signal that you purchased it never made it to that advertiser, and those advertisers are trying to be the last click before you buy something because they saw that you put it in your shopping cart.
Right.
And so they're trying to get credit even though they don't realize that you already bought it. So I helped build something where you could use Google Analytics data as an advertiser to inject that signal into various advertising systems so that you would know that it had been purchased and you could stop wasting your money advertising, right? So those are the kind of well-meaning but annoying ads that annoy me the most. And there were advertisers that I remember. It would always be around the holidays when I would be looking for stuff, and my mom would be like, "What do you want for Christmas or whatever?" And I'd look stuff up online and like put it in my cart because you had to put it in your cart to see how much it actually cost.
Right.
And then say, "Yes, I want this thing," and then it would follow me around the web forever.
Yeah.
When I got to work on something that helped make that go away, that was pretty cool. But again, that's only for the advertising that advertisers use that feature on.
Right. Totally. Cool.
I have to run to class, but it was so nice speaking with you, Chris. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, Audrey had a heart out. She's got to go she's doing a whole student thing, but we'll keep talking.
I understand.
Look forward to hearing the rest of it.
So pressure's on us to be interesting.
There you go.
So when you go back to that idea of, you're at this place now where you've done so many different things. You've been in so many different companies. You I think you get a real big, to put words in your mouth, but something you've been talking about a lot has been like corporate culture and kind of getting to know people and finding that right environment and doing something that's fulfilling to you. How do you talk to a high school student now that wants your sense of nirvana, that transcendentalism that you seem to have acquired, but they want it now, right? And does that speak to you when you look back at yourself, like you wanted to know the answer of what you're going to do back in the day, or were you okay just being flexible?
So I had totally made up my mind. I thought back in the day, but I still like the Viterbi ambassador thing kind of rubbed off on me. I realized, we have this program now called University Programs Extended.
Yeah.
Which is like there's only so many recruiters or university program specialists that Google has. But now they basically just train us engineers to go do the same thing that they would do at other schools. Like they would always have us out for panels, but now they have us basically run the whole interaction.
Oh, cool.
And so we go, there's a satellite campus of the University of Washington in Bothell, which is just north of our office in Kirkland. And so we went and did a whole series there on just like how to get a job in the tech industry. And so like it's one of those things where I think the key thing for me to realize is that like you just have to be flexible. The things that I do now, like related to machine learning, when I was in college, were things that we said, that all of the academic literature said was like, this would work, but there's no way we have enough machines to do this ever.
Yeah.
Right. And now it's like, oh yeah, we build those neural networks and it just works.
Yeah. We're beyond Moore's law now. Yeah.
Well, and to some extent, Moore's law is going away,
right? Because
we can't build the silicon that fast. But now we're going back to building these custom processors again, which is what we did 30 years ago to do so. So like everything old is new again is kind of the thing I've always heard. And when I worked at Applied Signal Technology, our chief technical officer was a guy who had been working in the communications space, like phone and internet, forever. And he would run a class describing like how the phone system works. And it would start with like how Alexander Graham Bell hooked up the first telephone and how nothing has ever changed since then, right? Like the fundamentals underlying how circuit switch networks work are the fundamentals underlying how circuit switch networks work. And the intermediate spots are just details that keep changing to be more efficient over time, but underneath it all, the process is still the same. And so I think this idea of the key thing that I took away essentially by accident from school, like from college, was to learn how to learn, and to learn how to like be comfortable not knowing something, knowing that you can figure it out.
Yeah.
Because that's what you're going to have to do your whole life. Today, the thing I'm most jealous of in terms of like high school and college students are like GitHub exists, right? Like all of these resources that are available to just try stuff out at a scale that like was never possible when I was a kid. And so that kind of stuff is really exciting. And like the idea of like the whole maker community is something I wish I had more time to do. But like my daughter wants a claw machine, and the one we got her for Christmas broke like immediately. So I was like, we can build one of these, and it's going to take forever because I don't have a lot of time. Yeah. But like doing that kind of stuff and being able to figure it out is super cool. And having kind of the ability to do that at, in college at a makerspace, or at work, we're lucky enough to have makerspaces in all of our offices up here, is pretty cool. So like taking advantage of the resources that you have now is amazing.
That's great. What's funny is we haven't released it yet, but we just did an interview with Tracy Dooley, I think who you may remember. And there's a lot of parallels to your conversation with hers. And with hers, it was a lot of every one of her transitions, whether they're professional or otherwise, were all about like this idea of seeking rigor and finding reward and then moving on to new rigor. And so that's very similar in this parallel. And that's something that I find as a thread among USC students is this idea of like, I just want to do something that's interesting. I want to go find that next big thing, not for the sake of success necessarily, but for the understanding of like, I really like doing this and I want to find something new. And that's a thread that has gone through your undergraduate time here and also in your professional life. And it's definitely, it just makes you a different person. And there's so many worries from a high school student's perspective of, I don't want to be a stereotypical engineer. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And you're not going to be if you follow these main principles. Like, do you like doing things to solve that puzzle? Do you want to go forward and do different things? You're not going to be some, for lack of a better term, some nerdy geek on a computer in a cubicle. But if you're going after things and doing things that are going to be fulfilling, like you enjoy this, there's a feedback loop. It's going to be great. And that's what our students do all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. I came back like a year ago, I think in January, to give a talk at Google or for Google at USC. And we were with a group called Code the Change, which I had never even heard of. And those people are so inspiring. Yeah. It's this cross-functional group of students who are trying to like build software to build like social change. And like, it's exactly what you do in the real world. Like they've got UX designers and product managers and software engineers, but like everybody's talking about like how they're going to solve the problem. Like the programming aspect of software engineering is like the last part.
Yeah.
To almost every extent. Like there are people and who are far smarter than me, who are they fundamentally changed the way that like computer science works. I'm much more on what I would call like the engineering side of it, where I take the pieces that they've built and put them together in a way that solves a problem that I have. Right. Like there's definitely room for both kinds of people there, but sure. I find it much more fulfilling to work with other people and like build something out of a bunch of other smaller something.
Yeah, that's cool. And I don't want to keep you too long either, but is there anything else that you wanted to chat about, or anything else that we didn't? I think we went pretty soup to nuts on your time here, but I don't know if we've missed anything.
Yeah, I mean, so I heard Jason talk about Steve Schrader, who I'm glad is still there.
He's still there.
Because that triggered me to remember the time he told me not to take CS 402 and EE 457 at the same time, which is the operating systems class and the microprocessors class.
Two giant senior capstone design classes that are designed to take up so much of your time.
Yeah, we were smart. We decided we were smarter than Steve, and we took them anyway. And I distinctly remember having a midterm or a final or something for EE 357 that was in the computer science building, and then going immediately with my roommate and our two other friends who were like, the only reason we were all taking this together is because we wanted to make sure we could take it together because there were group projects and we wanted to be in the same group.
Mm-hmm.
And we went immediately over to the computer lab to try to write the virtual memory system for our operating system. And we spent hours, and we must have left at 5 a.m. And we're like, okay, we'll pick this up tomorrow morning and figure out what it looks like. And we come back and we look at the comments in the code and we're like, yes, these comments describe exactly what we were supposed to do. And the code is just completely unrelated to what the comments say. Like, well, I guess maybe we shouldn't have taken these two classes together. We eventually got it to work.
I'll take that opportunity to tell any one of our first year students, when an advisor tells you that's not a good idea or no, you shouldn't do that, it's not because of some sort of odd bureaucratic rule that like we want to impose some sort of restriction on our students. Because I think so many of our students come from high schools where like high schools say you can't do that. They're like, well, but I did it anyway and look how great I am. When you come to college, we're not doing it just for the sake of like, like, oh, a lesser person would not do that. It's like, no, that's really not a good idea. We're looking out for you. Like, do whatever you want, dude. But like, this is a good plan. Follow this plan. And trust me, and I say this sometimes to students all the time, you're not the first version of you I've met. Like I've had this conversation 20 different times. And when I say this isn't a good idea, it's for your benefit. It's not for me. It's not for me at all.
Yeah. And I'll second it. I mean, get to know your advisor because they can work magic also. Like I may or may not have gotten out of a 400 level math elective with an accounting class that happened to be 400 level.
Don't make any promises now for old rules that may not be in place anymore.
But I'm just saying, make friends with your advisor and listen to them because they will be very helpful.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this, especially upon the rescheduling and the snowpocalypse that you've been dealing with up there, your massive amounts of snow. And also, thank you again. I mean, you're obviously very involved as an alumnus, and obviously with the helping with the scholarship fund that I know you just made a big impact on this last year. And so I'm sorry I wasn't here that day. Again, I apologize. But hopefully we'll see each other soon. And you've always been such a great impact on this place since I started as a current student, as a graduate student, as an alum. And even today, I know that I can ring you up and say, hey, what's up? And that's always really helpful. So thanks so much, man. I really appreciate you doing this.
Yeah, no worries. I really enjoyed it.
Cool, man. All right, we'll let you know when we get this up.
Sounds good.
Okay. Talk later. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Welcome back.
That was a fun one.
That was a fun one. I like these alumni series, other than the fact that you do have to sit through all this reminiscing Glory Day stuff, which we did a little bit less of in this one, I think.
Yes. Well, it's actually been kind of interesting, like the reminiscing in different years. You know, I've kind of gotten a sense of like the 1999, 2000s range, and then like a little later.
What's the biggest difference?
Well,
is there a difference?
I've noticed like that first group of I guess ESAs. I don't know what they're
Yeah, they were originally called Engineering Student Ambassadors.
Engineering Student Ambassadors.
Because we weren't named the Viterbi School until 2004.
Okay, right.
And
so
I still remember.
Makes sense.
This is now more reminiscing. I still remember the ambassador meeting where I said, "Okay, you all have been called ESAs. We've now been called the Viterbi School of Engineering. What should we call you? What do you want to be named?" And there was like a debate.
Ooh.
Do we stay the ESAs? Do we turn into the VSAs? Do we go into the VESAs?
Ooh, I'm glad you didn't choose that
The
one.
VESAs?
It's like Vespa without a P.
But it was quickly resolved to be VSAs. But
Okay, great.
go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted.
It's interesting talking to like a bunch of that first class because they all know each other super well. And then in some later episodes.
That we haven't gotten to yet. Yeah, tease. Oh, look at the tease.
I know. There's a little bit more recent alumni, so just kind of seeing the shift too.
Yeah.
And I think too, it's cool to see the growth of Viterbi too. I know, like for me as a prospective student, that was one thing I was really excited about. I felt like USC was a school that was like really putting in 100% to just keep doing more things, and I think you can kind of hear that in these conversations.
Totally. What was Chris? Obviously every one of these alums are different people, and of course I'm comparing all of them. That we haven't released some of them yet, but what do you think the difference between Chris and some of the other ones. Is there a difference? I mean, to me, obviously he's a brilliant guy. I think he's one of those like really hard workers, like behind the scenes. Like it's very much like he's going to do whatever you need of him. And when you start asking questions, like when we got into that question about what he's working on now with ads, it was like you could see his eyes change, right? Where it's like he got into like he knows every single corner of that space really, really well, right?
Yeah, that's when you immediately asked that question, that's what I was going to say. I think it really just strikes me as someone super knowledgeable and invested in his work and excited about it. And it's cool to see. I mean, he's been in industry for a while, working for, Google for quite some time if you count kind of the whole time he was there. So it's cool. It's exciting to see that he still sort of has that fire, right?
Yeah,
so.
Totally. Like he just totally digs going to work and solving these problems.
Yeah.
Like he's like, I'm going to figure it out. We're going to figure this out. We're going to make sure we do it the right way. And I feel like that was always Chris's thing. And it's really interesting to compare Chris and Jason because I kind of think of them always together, but they're very different people. Jason, and obviously their careers have gone in those very different stages, both equally successful. But Jason is very much the like story guy and the, all about the artistic elements of computer science and the applications therein. And Chris is the like, I'm going to make whatever your idea, I'm going to make it work. We're going to make it actually work out. And you don't need to know all the details, but I will know all the details. And I think that's one of his greatest qualities, in addition to just being a great guy.
Yeah. So definitely a good listen. And I know a lot of people are interested in these sort of fields. So.
Totally. And I like the contrast between the two too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, let's, I don't know if there's anything else we need to talk about. Is there anything we need to talk about? I mean, it's February. It's freezing.
Well,
I know you don't think it's freezing because you're from Colorado.
I think it's cold.
Was it like negative 13 in Colorado yesterday or something like that? Somewhere in Denver?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I need to call my mom.
I don't know. But I'm freezing. I wake up and walk the dog. It's 40 degrees, and I'm like, I don't know what to do.
I've been wearing a down coat. I'm not going to lie.
It's cold. It is cold.
Yeah.
I rarely have like the heater on in my house overnight, and I'm like, no, I need it on all night. Like it's freezing.
Although I feel like it's been really nice during the day.
Yeah, totally. But I guess I haven't had a chance to like warm up. So even though it's like 60 or 61 during the day, it's like I'm still cold.
Right. You never like get that.
Yeah.
Get that temperature. Yeah.
And I love how people are probably mocking me right now by
probably.
listening to this. For whatever other temperature they're in, this is Southern California temperature, and so I know that I'm spoiled, but I'm still freezing right now.
You kind of like come to expect living in Southern California that it's just perfect all the time, though. So
Yes.
any like mild deviation from that, it's just upsetting.
Yes. It's supposed to be cold when it hits the 50s. We're not supposed to live in the 40s. That's just not what we do.
Yeah. Well, hopefully it gets warmer. We're all hoping for Paul it gets warmer.
I swear. Just, let's start a GoFundMe account. Let's make sure we make this work. I don't know if we can, I don't know.
Well, I think it'll warm up.
I think it'll work.
I think it'll warm up eventually.
I think so. Something relevant is probably application status. We have a lot of applications that everyone involved in admission is reading right now, and it's hard because for students that have applied, first off, thank you for applying. Second off, I understand how horrible it is to be in this like void, this vacuum of information. But unfortunately, it's just kind of the nature of it.
Yeah.
There's all this contact prior to application. Like, don't forget to apply, don't forget this. And then once you've applied, we do send a, hey, thanks for applying. But then there's nothing. And that's not on purpose. It's not that we don't care anymore, but it's just that we're spending all of our time and energy like going into the applications and reading them and quite literally arguing about them, given some of my conversations I've had lately with some of my colleagues. And that's all good. That's for the benefit of the students. But that means that that's all in this like really closed black box environment. And so we had, nearly 13,000 applications this year. We have, for the first year class, we've got about 1,200 or so for the transfer class, because we just passed the transfer application deadline. And so we're right on par with where we need to be. We got a lot of great applications, which means that we have to go through and make a lot of tough decisions, and that's what we're doing. Some people may know that at the end of January, we released the university released the admission decisions for a small amount of students that are being considered as finalists for our top merit scholarships. And those students have already known, and they're already registering to come out to visit campus. And also, when they come to campus, they'll have an interview to decide which scholarship they will receive, if any, because it's a finalist, it's a competition. And that's all happening. We're going to be having these students visit over the next couple of weeks. And then then everyone else we're still reading and making decisions on. We're not going to be able to have decisions out till the end of March. And so that last week in March is when we're going to let everybody know. For the transfer students in the process, there are a number of you that have submitted the common application, and that's fantastic. And then you need to get us kind of the rest of the information, like transcripts, so that we know from every institution that you've ever attended, which is important. Even if it was 10 years ago you attended a college, we need to see that transcript. And then we will get to that review process kind of shortly thereafter. We finish up the first year process, and we will get decisions out by the end of May. And so decisions or a request for spring grades. And so you can go back and listen to our transfer episode on more of that detail. But that means that there's not a lot of information to give. You could always log into admission.usc.edu/status if you'd like to learn more. If you want to see if we have everything that we have asked you for, or if you're missing any documents, please log in there and you can check that out. You can also submit things on that portal for us to see. But that's really it. That's all we can do. And we'll be back in touch based on those deadlines. So that's where we are in our admission process.
Very exciting.
Yeah. Well, it's not to them, but they should probably know because they get nervous.
I don't miss that. Although I think you reach a point, I remember from senior year of high school, where you kind of just live in the bliss of not knowing.
Not knowing, right? That's what I try to tell students to do. Like, just apply and then just forget about it. I know that's impossible, but
yeah, I've gotten really great at that in college. Like, take a test, forget about it.
Yeah, it's done. You cannot change anything in the past.
Exactly.
Just move forward.
This is true. Very true.
Right.
All right. Well, my advice to all those students is to hang in there.
To live in the bliss.
Live in the bliss.
Live in the bliss of the unknown.
Exactly. All right. Well, we should probably wrap this one up.
Might as well.
But thanks, everyone.